Autumn was slipping into winter, and the cold in our Pennsylvania suburb had a way of settling into your bones. I had just finished calibrating drainage models for a construction site near Delaware when I got a reminder ping on my phone. Alicia's birthday dinner tonight, don't forget the cake. It was from Diane, my stepmother. No, how are you? No, thank you for covering the groceries last night. Just that flat reminder, like I was the household assistant, not the one who paid the bills or ran the errands or held this family up by my fingernails. I was 29, a civil engineer. I paid the mortgage, paid the utilities, made sure Dad took his meds when he forgot, cleaned up after Alicia when she blew past her deadlines and skipped her part of the chores. I didn't mind at first. I told myself it was temporary, that I was the responsible one. But the truth is, I'd become the one they relied on and looked past in the same breath. I was useful, predictable, background noise. When I walked through the door that evening, the house was already full. Balloons, loud music, glittery gift bags piled on the dining table. Alicia, radiant as always, stood in the center of it all, posing like she was on the cover of a fashion blog, her curls perfect, her nails freshly done, her laugh just loud enough to be admired. Diane drifted behind her like a proud stage mom, holding a champagne flute and giggling at things no one really said. The kitchen smelled like catered pasta. Someone had ordered cupcakes. The lights were warm, almost too warm, like they were trying too hard to feel like joy. Hey, you're late, Diane chirped, waving a paper plate at me like she was giving me a task instead of a greeting. Can you check the basement? I think I heard water dripping earlier. Her tone was cheerful but indifferent, like I was maintenance staff. There was no, hi Maddie. No, thanks for grabbing milk yesterday when we ran out. No happy birthday, even though mine had passed just 3 days ago. No one said anything about it then. No cake, no card, not even a text. I glanced toward the living room. Dad sat slumped by the TV, staring at a muted nature documentary like he was trying to remember what a bird was. His eyes flickered when he saw me, a faint spark of recognition that faded too fast. Hey, Maddie, right. Something in my chest tensed, sharp and quiet. Yeah, Dad, it's me. I slipped off my coat, still damp from the wind outside, and hung it on the hook by the door. My feet ached. My shoulders were sore. I hadn't eaten since noon. And now, instead of a chair or a thank you or even a nod of acknowledgement, I was being sent to the basement to check a leak. And like always, I did it. The basement always smelled like damp drywall and forgotten things. Boxes of tangled Christmas lights, a treadmill Dad swore he'd fix 5 years ago, and a pile of broken junk Diane insisted we keep just in case. But that night, something new lingered in the air, a steady, quiet drip, the kind that doesn't seem urgent until it's too late. I followed the sound to the far wall near the washer. My phone flashlight flickered across the concrete floor. Water was puddling beneath the pipes, glistening in thin lines like the basement itself was sweating. I crouched down to take a closer look, cold already seeping through my jeans, breath visible in the musty air. Then above me came a creak, a sudden bang. The old storm door slammed shut. I jerked upright and rushed to the stairs, heart thudding. I twisted the handle. Nothing, yanked harder, still nothing. Locked, jammed, swollen from the cold. Or worse, someone had closed it. I tried again, harder, the wood scraping under my palm. Hello, I called out. Hey, can someone open the door? My voice echoed up the stairwell, absorbed into the ceiling. The music from upstairs kept thudding, muffled and cheerful, like nothing had happened. I slammed my fist against the door. Diane, Alicia, no response. Just laughter and clinking glasses above, oblivious. My flashlight flickered again, then died. Darkness folded over me, heavy, silent. I stood still for a few seconds, listening, trying to stay calm. I banged harder, both fists now. "Hey, I'm stuck down here," I shouted. Nothing. No footsteps, no answering voice, not even the creak of someone leaning over the door. I pulled out my phone. No signal. 1% battery. The screen dimmed and went black. And that's when I noticed it. The drip wasn't a drip anymore. It was a flow. Water was spreading in a slow sheet across the concrete, reaching toward me like cold fingers. I stepped back and hit a shelf. My shoes were soaked. My socks clung to my feet. The puddle wasn't a puddle anymore. It was rising. Still, no one came. I pressed my ear against the underside of the door. Maybe someone was coming. Maybe Diane had finally noticed I wasn't upstairs. Maybe Alicia wondered where I'd gone. But instead, I heard a voice, Diane's, floating faintly through the floorboards. She probably ran out to get something. That girl's always doing her own thing. Then Alicia, laughing. I mean whatever, more wine. The sound of their laughter felt sharper than the cold around my ankles. I stepped away from the door, shaking. Not from the chill, but from the quiet realization settling in my gut. No one had seen me come down. No one remembered I was here. And no one was coming. I reached for the tiny basement window near the far wall, the one that used to open before someone nailed it shut. I tried kicking it. Nothing. I slammed the side of my fist against the glass. The frame didn't budge. I turned back toward the stairs, looking up into the darkness above me, still sealed, still silent. The water had reached my calves. I paced in a tight circle, phone dead in my pocket, shoes squishing with every step. I wanted to scream, but something inside me, something I'd carried for years, told me it wouldn't matter. Because I was used to this. Not the water, not the darkness, but being forgotten, ignored, taken for granted. I thought about all the things I'd done for this house. The nights I'd driven Dad to the hospital alone because Alicia couldn't handle the stress. The time I spent fixing Diane's car while she bragged about how dependable I was. The years I poured into being the glue, the spine, the backup plan, never the main character. Now I was trapped under their feet and they were dancing over my head. And the water kept rising. I kept calling, louder each time until my voice turned hoarse. Nothing. Not a single creak from above, not a shift in footsteps, not even a shadow crossing the stairwell window. Only the bass of music, muted by floors and drywall, pulsing like a reminder that life went on without me. The basement swallowed my voice like it had been waiting to. Every word felt smaller, every shout less urgent. The water was at my knees now, cold enough that my legs began to ache. I sloshed across the basement, looking for anything, tools, furniture, a screwdriver, a wrench, that might help me pry open the door or break the window. But everything I touched was either rusted through or useless. A bent mop handle. A warped plank of wood. A folding chair with one broken leg. There was nothing. Just piles of things nobody ever needed, stacked in corners, collecting dust and mold. I moved to the center of the room and looked up again. Diane, Alicia, Dad. Please, I screamed, fists pounding the walls now, knuckles raw from the impact. The door stayed shut. My chest heaved from the effort. I could feel the cold tightening around my ribs, crawling higher with every breath. Still, no one came. That's when the panic truly started. Not the sharp kind that makes you run. The slow, crushing kind. The kind that sinks its weight onto your back and tells you, quietly, this is how it ends. The water reached my thighs. My jeans were soaked through. My fingers went numb. I tried to move faster to stay above it somehow, but there was no platform, no ledge, no dry spot, just water, everywhere. The house above me buzzed with life. And down here, I was alone. I pressed myself against the far wall, trying to stay warm, trying to will the water to stop. But it didn't. I thought about how ridiculous it was that I might drown in my own basement during my sister's birthday party while no one noticed. No hurricane, no flood warning, just a leak, a forgotten pipe, and a woman nobody looked for. I wrapped my arms around my chest, shivering. The silence got louder than any scream I could manage. I thought about Dad. About the way his face had flickered earlier. How he'd needed a full second to remember my name, his daughter. I thought about Diane's face as she handed me a paper plate like a chore list. About Alicia's perfect nails, her easy laughter, her total confidence that someone else would always do the hard part. I thought about my own birthday, 3 days ago, when no one said a word. The water reached my waist. I closed my eyes and whispered to no one, "Happy birthday, Maddie." It came out more bitter than sad, a reflex, something to fill the space. I looked around the basement again. At the broken treadmill Dad used to promise he'd fix. At the holiday decorations Diane never bothered unpacking. At the shelves of old junk no one had touched in years. Things that once mattered, now discarded, forgotten. I was part of that pile, wasn't I? Useful, but never loved. The light bulb above me flickered once, then died. Darkness fell completely, not the kind you can adjust to. The kind that wraps around you like it has fingers. I tried to control my breathing, but the cold had gotten inside my bones. My legs trembled. My chest felt tight. I sank down to my knees in the water, teeth chattering, muscles locking up, head tilted toward the ceiling like I was begging it not to forget me too. And then I gave up calling. I gave up waiting, because some part of me had already accepted it. No one was coming. Not Diane, not Alicia, not even Dad. They were too busy living upstairs. Too busy pretending I wasn't down here. The water had reached my chest. I could barely feel my feet anymore, and my hands had started to tremble uncontrollably. The darkness was total. My breaths came in short, uneven gasps, every inhale burning from the cold, every exhale sounding too loud in the stillness. I pressed my back to the wall, trying to lift my chin higher above the waterline, trying not to think about the weight soaking into my clothes, dragging me down. I wanted to cry, but even my tears felt frozen in place. I kept replaying the night in my head, searching for the moment it all went wrong. Was it when I walked through the door, when I didn't push back, when I accepted Diane's orders without question again? Or was it long before that, when I first learned to be quiet, to be dependable, to never need too much? I don't know how long I stayed there, shivering in the dark, waiting. I thought of Diane's voice, shrill, dismissive, somewhere above me. Alicia's laugh, careless and smooth. Dad's blank face. My birthday, the groceries, the errands. Every moment I gave to people who didn't even know I was drowning. I was slipping under mentally, emotionally, physically when I heard it. A sound. Not from above, from outside. It was faint at first, a shuffle, then something heavier, metal hitting wood. My heart jolted. I wasn't sure if it was real. Then again, louder this time. A thud, then another. The storm door rattled. I opened my mouth to shout, but barely a gasp came out. I tried again, dragging air into my lungs. "I'm down here," I croaked, voice cracking. Then another noise, a grunt, and a hand, not Diane's, not Alicia's. A rough, calloused hand pushed through the crack in the storm door's slats. I heard a crowbar grinding against the frame, wrenching, prying. The wood groaned, then splintered. The door creaked open with a moan that sounded like it had waited years to be freed. A silhouette leaned over the stairs, framed by the gray light of the storm and the harsh glow of a nearby street lamp. Rain was pouring behind her, soaking her coat. Her voice was low but firm. "Hang on," she said. "I've got you." I couldn't move at first. I was shaking too hard. But when she stepped into the stairwell, boots splashing through the water, arms steady, eyes locked on mine, I felt something shift. She didn't flinch at the cold, didn't pause at the smell, didn't hesitate. "Can you stand?" she asked, already moving toward me. I nodded weakly. She hooked an arm around my back, strong, sure, and pulled me forward. Each step was a battle. The stairs were slick. My legs felt like lead. But she never let go. She gritted her teeth, shoved a fallen branch out of the way, cursed under her breath at the warped frame. "Stupid old wood," she muttered. "Should have been replaced years ago." If only she knew the irony. We made it to the street. Rain hit my face like needles. My shoes squelched with every step. She didn't lead me toward the house. She turned away from it, half carrying me down the sidewalk, past the trash bins, past the driveway, past the glowing windows full of people who never noticed I was gone. "Where are we going?" I managed to whisper. "Clinic," she said. "Couple blocks from here. They're open all night. You're in shock." I didn't argue. I didn't ask her name. I just let her guide me. Her hand on my back felt steadier than anything I'd known in years. She smelled like rain and metal and something earthy. I didn't even fully register her face, just the knit beanie plastered to her head, her soaked coat, the quiet strength in her voice. When we reached the side entrance of the clinic, she banged hard on the door. A nurse opened it cautiously, eyeing both of us with concern. "We're full unless it's urgent," the nurse said. "She nearly drowned," the woman said flatly. "No one else is coming for her, please." They let us in. Everything after that moved in fragments. Warm blankets, bright lights, plastic tubing. Someone peeled off my soaked clothes with clinical detachment. Someone else pressed a stethoscope to my chest. I could hear the nurses talking, but their voices felt like they were underwater. One of them asked me questions I couldn't quite answer. My name, my age, my emergency contact. I tried to form words, but my teeth wouldn't stop chattering. "She's hypothermic," one nurse muttered. "Mild but close. Good thing you found her." I looked to the side. The woman who'd pulled me out stood near the edge of the room, soaked through, her arms folded, dripping onto the linoleum floor. She didn't speak, didn't explain, just watched. The nurse leaned in. "Is there anyone we should call for you?" "A family." I hesitated. The woman answered first. "No one's coming." She didn't say it cruelly, just as fact. And somehow, hearing it from her felt less like a wound and more like a strange kind of permission to stop hoping. I nodded. They let her stay in the corner while they checked me over. IV fluids, a heating pad, a thin hospital gown and socks that didn't fit. Eventually the chaos quieted, and I was left alone in a curtained-off space, the hum of machines filling the silence. I turned my head again. She was still there, sitting in a plastic chair, holding a styrofoam cup of cheap vending machine coffee. I wanted to speak, but my throat burned. So I just watched her, this stranger who had walked into my life in the moment everyone else walked away. Finally, I found my voice. "Why did you help me?" She looked over, raised an eyebrow like it was the simplest question in the world. "Because nobody else did." Her tone was flat, not defensive, not heroic, just true. The nurse came back and said I'd need to stay overnight for observation. I didn't ask how long, I didn't care. I was warm, alive, breathing. That was enough for now. Later, after the nurses left and the hallway dimmed, she moved closer, pulling the curtain half closed behind her. She held out a granola bar from her pocket, slightly crushed, probably from the clinic's donation pantry. I took it with shaky hands. We split it. It was dry, stale, but in that moment it tasted better than anything I'd eaten all week. "I'm Maddie," I said after a pause. She nodded. "Nora." We didn't say much after that. Didn't need to. There was something in her presence, solid still, like the eye of a storm I didn't know I'd been in, that kept me grounded. Across town, I imagined Diane finally noticing I wasn't upstairs. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe she just assumed I had left early, or gone to get more napkins, or decided to do my own thing again. Either way, no one had called. No one came. Except Nora. I woke sometime after sunrise. The heater hummed softly, and the air smelled like detergent and something overly sterilized. My throat still felt raw, and my body ached in slow, deep pulses, like every part of me was reminding me I had almost disappeared. Nora was still there. She hadn't moved much, still curled in the corner chair, her coat draped over her knees, the knit beanie now resting on her lap. Her eyes were closed, but her arms stayed crossed, like even in sleep she didn't trust the room to hold her. There was something about her stillness that calmed me, not gentle, not soft, just steady. I shifted carefully in the bed. The movement made her open her eyes. "You stayed," I said, voice rough. She nodded like it was obvious. "You shouldn't wake up alone." I blinked. No one had ever said that to me before. The nurse came in to check my vitals and offered a bland breakfast on a plastic tray. I barely touched it. Afterward, she asked again, gently, if there was anyone to call. Family, friends, emergency contacts. I looked at Nora. She stood and walked to the nurse before I could answer. "No one's coming," she said again, and this time I didn't feel the sting of it, just the truth of it. The nurse didn't press. She just handed me a discharge form and asked if I had a ride. I hesitated. Nora spoke for both of us. "She's with me." It was such a small sentence, but it held weight. I wasn't sure where "with me" meant. I didn't ask. I just signed the papers and followed her out into the gray morning. The air was damp, the sky low and colorless. We walked in silence for a block, then two. She didn't lead me toward the main streets or the rows of neat suburban houses, but down a side path, through a narrow alley where the buildings started to crack and the windows were covered with wood. That's when I realized she didn't live in a house. She lived near houses, in the shadows of them, behind the places people passed without noticing. We turned the corner behind an old bookstore, the kind with warped bricks and a faded open sign still hanging crooked in the window. Behind it there was a small, weather-beaten door half covered in ivy. She pulled it open. Inside was a storage room, dry but barely lit, a cot in the corner, 2 crates stacked as a shelf. A folded blanket, a camping lantern, a space heater that groaned more than it worked. "You can have the cot," she said. "I'll take the floor." "No," I said quickly. "Let's trade off." She raised an eyebrow. "You okay with that?" I nodded. "Better than okay." She tossed me a pillow from the corner. "Then welcome to my place. 5 stars if you like roof leaks and no hot water." I smiled, the first one that didn't feel forced in days. We spent that day in silence. She dozed off mid-afternoon. I sat on the floor and stared at the wall, unsure of what to do with stillness. By evening, she pulled out 2 small cans of soup. One was dented, the other had no label. "Surprise dinner," she joked. "Could be lentils, could be peaches." It was lentils, barely warm, but it felt like a feast. That night before bed, she handed me a pen and a notebook. Nothing fancy, just a composition book with a cracked spine. "You should write it down," she said. "What?" "Whatever you almost didn't get to say." I stared at the page for a long time. Then, slowly, I began to write. Not a full story, just pieces, a sentence here, a thought there. I wrote about the cold water, about the silence. About the look on Dad's face when he forgot who I was. About Diane's voice. About my own voice, smaller than it should have been. I didn't cry. I just let the words fill the space. The next morning, Nora found me still holding the notebook. "Feel better?" she asked. "Not yet," I said, "but maybe soon." She nodded. "That's enough." We settled into a rhythm, quiet but steady. Mornings were slow, marked by instant coffee from the clinic's pantry and shared silence. Afternoons were spent walking, nowhere in particular, just moving. Past chain-link fences, empty playgrounds, the kind of places you only notice when you're not trying to impress anyone. Nora never asked too many questions. She didn't press when I didn't talk, but she always noticed. She noticed when I couldn't finish a thought, when I stopped mid-sentence, when I didn't sleep through the night. One afternoon, as we sat beneath a crumbling awning watching traffic blur past, she asked, "You ever think about seeing him?" I didn't need to ask who she meant. My father, I shrugged. I don't know, he probably wouldn't remember. Half the time, he calls Diane by his old assistant's name. Last time I saw him, he thought I was a nurse. Still, Nora said, sometimes people don't remember facts, but they remember feelings. That stayed with me longer than I expected. The next morning, I called the facility where Diane had moved him last spring. The receptionist recognized my name and asked, "It's been a while, would you like to schedule a visit?" I said yes. My voice sounded too small, even to me. We took the bus across town. Nora came with me but didn't go inside. "I'll wait out here," she said. "Take your time." I nodded and walked through the glass doors alone. The place smelled like lemon cleaner and something faintly floral, like they were trying to make you forget where you were. The halls were quiet. A nurse guided me to the common room. My father was sitting by the window, staring at the leaves outside as if they were telling him a story he couldn't quite follow. "Dad," I said softly. He turned, squinted. For a second, I saw the flicker again, the one from the night of Alicia's party. Recognition tugged at the corner of his expression. Maddie. Just that, my name, but not in question this time, not like a stranger testing a guess. He said it like he knew. I sat beside him, unsure what to do with my hands. He looked thinner, softer somehow. But his eyes were clear that morning, more alert than I'd seen in months. "Still doing those bridge blueprints?" he asked. I smiled faintly, something like that. We didn't talk about the house, or Diane, or Alicia. He talked about the trees, about how early the cold came this year, about a bird he saw yesterday that reminded him of a trip we once took to the Piconos. I nodded along, didn't correct him, didn't try to pull him into my present. It was enough just to sit there and feel seen, even for 10 minutes. Before I left, I pulled a photo from my bag us at my college graduation. He took it from my hand slowly, stared at it for a long time. "I used to be someone," he said quietly. "You still are," I said back. He didn't respond, but he held onto the photo like it meant something. Before leaving, I stopped at the front desk. I asked to be removed from the financial contact list. No more monthly transfers. No more managing bills I was never thanked for. I told them if there was a true emergency, they could still call me, but not Diane, just me. I also requested one thing be sent home with me. The old toolbox he gave me when I turned 18. They said it was still in storage. They brought it out. Metal sides scratched, handle worn, initials still burned into the top. When I got back to Nora's place, I sat on the floor and opened the lid. Under the socket wrenches and old screws was a folded piece of paper, yellowed, creased, written in the shaky hand of someone who once held a steady grip. "Maddie, for building things when no one else can. I love you, kid, always." I didn't cry, not because it didn't matter, but because, finally, I didn't need anyone else to validate the space I took up. My name, just one word spoken with clarity and intention, was enough. That night, I wrote more. Not just about the basement, but everything before it. The years of being useful, the ache of being unseen, the freedom of finally walking away. Nora didn't read over my shoulder. She didn't ask what I was writing. But she refilled my tea without me needing to ask. Sometimes that's all you need. Someone who sees you even when you don't say a word. I thought that would be the end of it. Quietly stepping back from the house, from the accounts, from the role I'd been forced to play for so long, I thought that would be enough. But Diane didn't like when things slipped out of her control. It started with a voicemail. I hadn't even saved her number, but I knew the tone the moment I heard it. That overly formal sharpness she used when she was trying to sound reasonable. "Hi, Maddie, it's your mother. Well, stepmother." I saw the withdrawal from the estate file. "I don't know what you're trying to prove, but this isn't how responsible daughters behave. Call me back." I didn't. A few days passed. Then came the email. Subject line, urgent family discussion. It was 3 lines long, but it hit all her usual notes. Guilt, manipulation, performative concern. Your father wouldn't want this. You're abandoning everything he built. At least meet me so we can talk this through like adults. Nora read it over my shoulder while sipping tea from a chipped mug. "She's spinning," she said calmly. "She always does," I replied. "You want to meet her?" I looked out the window at the gray sky, the familiar sidewalk where the neighborhood kids had started calling us the bookstore ladies, even though we didn't have a bookstore yet. "Just plans, just hope. I think I will," I said finally. "Not for her, for me." Because silence had kept me safe once, but now it felt like complicity. We chose a neutral spot, a coffee shop on Walnut Street. Public. Neutral, safe. I arrived 10 minutes early, ordered a plain tea, sat near the window. Diane walked in late, of course, wearing a coat that was too sharp for the weather, heels too loud for the floor, and a smile stretched too tightly across her face. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "I almost didn't." She smiled like that was charming. "Look, Maddie, I get it. You've been under stress lately. But you don't get to just walk away from your responsibilities." I blinked. "What responsibilities?" Her smile faltered. "Your father, the estate, the house. You're still part of this family." I reached into my bag and placed a small folder on the table. It made a soft, satisfying sound when it landed. "That's my formal resignation from the estate. Signed, witnessed, filed with the family lawyer. I want no part of it. Going forward, contact him, not me." She stared at the folder like it was something rotten. "You don't mean this." "I do." But you've always." "I've always done what you needed," I said, cutting her off. "Covered your overdraft. Paid for Alicia's dentist bills. Took care of Dad when you couldn't be bothered. You remember that night, the party, when you told me to check the basement?" Her face twitched. "You didn't notice I was gone for hours. You didn't hear me scream. You didn't even check." "I didn't know." "You didn't try to know." She opened her mouth. I raised my hand. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to tell you that if you ever try to access anything under my name, speak on my behalf, or guilt me into silence again." I pulled out my phone, tapped play. Her voicemail played, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "This isn't how responsible daughters behave." I stopped it midway. "I've saved everything, don't test me." She went pale, not with shame, just calculation. "Oh, you're threatening me." "No, I'm protecting myself, for the first time." She reached for her purse, shaking slightly. "I don't know who filled your head with this nonsense." "I did," I said calmly. "With truth, with clarity. With people who don't just use me, they see me." She stood to leave. But before she turned, she said one more thing. "You think walking away makes you strong?" "No," I said. "Knowing I could stay, and choosing not to, that's what makes me strong." I didn't wait for her reply. Outside, the wind had picked up, scattering leaves along the sidewalk. Nora was waiting 2 blocks down, leaning against the brick wall beside the second-hand shop, we both hoped would be ours soon. When she saw me, she didn't say anything. She just placed a hand lightly on my back and we walked home. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to justify the space I took up. The next storm came without warning. No Doppler radar alert. No sirens. Just a sky that collapsed inward with sudden weight and wind that howled like it had unfinished business. It hit the city fast, flooding gutters, rattling windows, turning streets into rivers. I was folding laundry at Nora's when the power flickered once, then went out. She didn't panic. She just lit a candle, moved the stack of books off the floor, and kept stirring the pot of soup we had on the portable burner. It was our rhythm now, quiet, prepared, calm. I moved to the window. Outside, the rain was torrential. The sidewalks had disappeared beneath inches of rushing water. Leaves clung to windshields. Branches broke and floated. Lightning cracked somewhere close, too close. My phone vibrated once. Then again, then again. 12 missed calls, all from Diane. I hesitated before opening the texts. The last one sat alone at the bottom of the screen. Alicia's trapped in the basement. Water's rising, please. I stared at it for a long time. My hand went still. The irony hit like a punch. Same house, same basement, same swollen door. But this time, I wasn't the one locked down there. My first instinct wasn't action. It was silence. Silence that came from years of being forgotten, of being used, of being the one who cleaned up, paid up, showed up, and was never seen. I could almost hear their laughter above me again, the night I nearly drowned. The glass clinks, the music, the sound of no one noticing. But then I remembered the water around my ribs, the panic, the pounding on the ceiling that went unanswered. And even if they didn't deserve it, especially Diane, I couldn't ignore the truth. Alicia was in that basement, and she was scared. I grabbed my coat and the crowbar Nora kept by the door. "You want me to come?" she asked, already standing. I shook my head. "Not this time." She nodded without protest. "You know where the flashlight is." By the time I reached the house, the front yard was a pond. The porch light blinked like it was giving up. Diane opened the door before I could knock. Her hair was wet, her face streaked with mascara, her phone still in hand like it might rescue her. "She's down there," she said breathlessly. I couldn't get the door open. I tried, I swear. I pushed past her. Same hall, same creaky stairs, same storm door bloated from rain and swollen shut. My fingers found the weak point near the hinge. I wedged the crowbar in, braced my foot, and yanked. The frame cracked. The door groaned, then gave way. The darkness beneath smelled the same. Wet wood, mold, electricity too close to water. I stepped down fast, flashlight beams slicing through the shadows. "Alicia," I called. A voice answered, high-pitched, trembling. "Maddie." She stood in the far corner on a plastic crate, water halfway up her waist, her makeup streaked, her eyes wide with panic. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not made up, not filtered, just a scared girl in a space no one was coming to check. I waded toward her. "I've got you," I said. She flinched as I reached her, then collapsed into my arms with a sob. Her shoulders shook against me. I didn't say anything else, just pulled her across the basement toward the stairs. She slipped once. I caught her. The water rose behind us. When we made it to the top, Diane was still hovering. I pushed Alicia toward her, grabbed a towel, and wrapped it around her shaking shoulders. Alicia looked up at me through red eyes. "You came," she whispered. I met her gaze, and for a moment, I didn't see the girl who'd always gotten more. I saw the sister who once needed someone, the part of her no one ever taught how to carry weight. "I wasn't going to leave you," I said. Diane stepped forward. "Maddie, I raised a hand. "I'm not here to talk." Her mouth clamped shut. I came because I know what it feels like down there, the dark, the rising cold. The sound of your own heartbeat when you realize no one's coming. She didn't answer, she didn't need to. I turned, crowbar still dripping in my hand, and walked toward the door. Alicia called out behind me, "Thank you." I didn't turn around, because this wasn't about reconciliation. It wasn't about revenge. It was about knowing who you are, even when no one else does. The storm passed by morning. The sky was still gray, but the air had that clean, hollow silence that always follows something violent. The streets were littered with branches, soggy flyers, overturned bins. But inside me, something had settled. The news spread faster than I expected. It started as a neighborhood post. Then a local blog picked it up. Then a photo, me carrying Alicia through ankle-deep floodwater, crowbar still in hand, circulated with the caption, "Engineer rescues stepsister from flooded basement." They didn't get the story right, of course. They never do. They left out the part where I nearly died in that same basement. The part where no one came for me. The part where I was invisible until I became useful again. Diane reposted every article. She added dramatic captions like, "Our miracle girl, so proud," and "Family always comes through in the end." It was all performative. All polished. Not a single mention of where she had been that night. Not a single word about what she didn't do. I didn't respond. Not to her, not to the comments, not to the emails that followed. I didn't owe anyone my version of the truth. Not anymore. Nora and I had been quietly working on something in the background. A narrow storefront 2 blocks from the park, once a pawn shop, then an empty shell with dust-covered windows. We'd scraped together enough to cover 1 month's rent. No investors, no grand opening, just 2 people trying to build something out of what was left. We called it the Basement Light. Nora came up with the name. "Because some of us don't drown in the dark," she said. "We carry it out with us." It fit. We scrubbed walls, patched the ceiling, found used shelves and chairs from a thrift warehouse that gave discounts for community projects. We painted the walls ourselves. I used Dad's old toolbox, the one with his initials still burned into the top, to repair the front door frame. We printed flyers, stapled them to poles, handed out bookmarks at the library. One kid started calling us the bookstore ladies. And slowly people came, not in droves, but steadily. An elderly man dropped off his collection of dog-eared poetry books. A teenager asked if he could leave his handmade zine on the shelf. A local teacher brought her students in on rainy days. We made soup on Fridays, left a kettle warming by the back table, let people stay as long as they needed. We weren't trying to make money, we were trying to make space. One afternoon, as I was stacking a new set of donated books near the front window, I heard the bell above the door. I turned. It was Alicia. She looked different. No makeup. No performance, just her. "I didn't come to apologize," she said quietly. "I know that doesn't fix anything." I nodded. She held out a small brown paper bag. "I brought lemon cookies, from that place near the train station. You used to like them." I took the bag, our fingers didn't touch. "Thanks," I said. She looked around the space, the mismatched chairs, the worn rug, the shelf with Nora's name etched in the wood. "This is amazing." "It's home," I said. "One we built ourselves." She nodded, eyes lowering. "I'm glad you got out." She turned to leave but paused at the door. "I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know I see it now, what you carried, what we didn't." Her voice cracked. "Thank you for saving me, even after everything." I didn't hug her, I didn't say I forgave her, but I didn't close the door behind her either. Because some wounds don't need to be reopened, they just need air. And time. That night, Nora and I stayed late, relabeling the used children's books. She wore her old knit hat, the one that always slid down over her eyebrows. Her hands were stained with paint from patching a crack near the back wall. She glanced over and said, "We're getting a space heater next." I laughed, "We'll budget for it." She paused, voice quieter. "You ever regret not going back?" I knew what she meant, not to the house, but to the old version of me, the one who stayed too long, gave too much, asked for nothing. "No," I said, "because this isn't less, it's more, just different." She didn't reply, she didn't have to. We shelved the last book in silence, the soft creak of wood and the hum of a cheap floor lamp filling the space between us. That was the night I stopped calling myself someone's daughter and started calling myself a builder. The first snow fell on Christmas Eve. No storm, no chaos, just a soft, steady hush that made the street glow under the lamplight. I stood by the front window of the basement light, holding a mug of cinnamon tea, watching the flakes drift across the glass. Behind me, the shop was warm. Nora stirred soup at the back, wearing the navy sweater I found for her at a second-hand sale, grumbling about how it was too fancy, but never actually taking it off. The reading nook glowed with string lights. A few kids sat on beanbags trading comics. Someone played soft jazz on a thrifted keyboard. The entire room smelled like gingerbread and lentils and the kind of comfort you can't buy. We didn't call it a holiday party. We didn't need to. It was just people gathered, some with nowhere to be, some who'd found their way to us, some who came back not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That meant more than tinsel or playlists ever could. At 9, Nora tapped her spoon on a cup and said, "I don't do speeches." Everyone laughed because they knew she was about to. I used to think family was something that either happened to you or didn't, like it was locked in blood or photos on a wall. But turns out, sometimes, if you're lucky, someone breaks down the door and lets the light in. She looked at me. I didn't speak, I didn't need to. Later that night, after the last mug had been rinsed and the last chair folded, I went downstairs to check the mail. Most of it was junk. A few handwritten notes, a coupon for furnace repair, and one envelope without a return address. My name, scribbled in shaky pen. I opened it upstairs in the quiet, one sheet of paper, my father's handwriting. "Maddie. If this letter finds you, it means I remembered something important before I forgot everything else. Thank you for being the kind of daughter who stayed when no one saw you. Thank you for keeping the lights on, the house, my heart. I don't know where I am now. But if I could say one thing, it's this: I see you, always did. Love, Dad." I didn't cry, I didn't have to. Nora was already standing in the doorway, holding something behind her back. "Merry Christmas," she said, and handed me a wrapped frame. Inside was a photo of us in front of the bookstore, paintbrushes in hand, tired eyes, messy clothes, and something settled between us that didn't need a name. Below it in her handwriting, "This is our basement light, and it never goes out." I smiled and hung it on the kitchen wall. No shelf, just one good nail and the right spot. Nora stepped beside me, her hand grazing mine. "That's all anyone really needs," she said. And she was right. Family isn't made by blood or forced dinners or birthday cards signed out of obligation. It's made by choice, by the people who hear you when you call in the dark. By the ones who don't just rescue you, they stay. They rebuild. They warm your soup and your silence and make space for the version of you that doesn't need to prove anything anymore. That winter, I didn't go back to the old house. But I went home. And if you're still searching for that kind of warmth, for stories that don't just tell you how someone survived, but show you how they started living, subscribe to Reddit Family Drama. There's always more light to find. Especially in the places everyone else forgot.